Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. Today we are doing, I feel like everybody's favorite video of the entire year. These are going to be my worst books of 2023. I do want to start off by saying this is just for the channel. This is for fun. Lots of these books are people's favorites. Lots of these books people just really enjoy. This is just my opinion. I feel like you need to insert that meme. It's just my opinion. Yeah, so don't take any of this too seriously. My opinion does not really mean anything unless you just have very similar taste to me, then you might avoid some books. But generally, take everything I say with a grain of salt. Literally every video that I do, take with a grain of salt, because I have very strong opinions about things, and a lot of times they're probably wrong. So you enjoy what you enjoy, you like what you like. That's pretty much where my thing is. If you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. So this is just for fun. Don't take it too seriously. I'm sorry if some of your favorites are on here. It's gonna get ugly. It's gonna get ugly. I'll put timestamps below just because this can get quite sensitive for some people. So if you see a book that you really like, just skip forward because none of it's gonna be good. None of it's gonna be good. And I did end up ranking these from least worst to loathe, to loathe. And I do have a couple of honorable mentions at first. I did honorable mentions this year, which I don't normally do. I normally do not put DNFs on this list because I did not finish the book. But I do have two. I do have two DNFs that are making this list, and that's why they're honorable mentions. Otherwise, we're doing top 10 worst books. So let's start with the honorable mentions. Next up, we have one that actually ended up ruining one of my vlogs that I was going to be doing. So I was going to be doing good hype versus bad hype and like seeing which book that I liked, but I read the bad hype book and I got 100 pages into it and I absolutely hated it. And I skimmed through it. I was like, okay, maybe this gets better. And it was so bad. It was one of the worst written books I've ever read in my entire life. And it was Light Lark by, oh, I don't even remember her name, but it was Light Lark. I'm popping them up right here so you can see the author. I have nothing to say about that book. I literally have nothing to say because it legitimately was one of the worst books I've ever read. Not even fully read. Not even fully read. And it was literally going to be one of those books that I was going to force myself to finish for a vlog. And I couldn't even get, I want to say I DNF'd like 75 pages. I couldn't even get 100 pages into this book before I was like, I literally cannot do this. I cannot do this. And I read pretty much every type of young adult fantasy and I couldn't get through this, which is really saying something, but it was not good. Wow, is this a bad book? The other one was, this one actually was pretty surprising, but it was City of Nightmares. This again was one of the worst written books that I've ever read, and it was the weirdest, most preachy thing that I've ever read. It was so bizarre because it was talking about at one point how terrible vampire stories are and how it's romanticized and blah, 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 blah. And I'm sitting there going, I can't tell if this is a monologue that your character believes in or you actually believe in this, because it goes on and on and on about corruption and about the state of like the publishing and movie world and romanticizing things that shouldn't be romanticized. And I'm sitting there going, you wrote a book series about monsters and serial killers that's romanticized. So what? I also think this is a little more sensitive of a topic, but what really pissed me off is something she did in her last series too. It felt very baity. I'm trying to figure out how to exactly explain this, but I read some really good books with asexual rep in it, and this was one of those books that was attempting to have really good asexual rep, but it felt like it was more like it was baiting non-asexual people into thinking there was a romance going on and then just going, no, it's just platonic. Why are you thinking too hard into this? It was very strange. And her last book series did the exact same thing. It started a romance in 2 books with no hint really at asexual characters. And then the third book was like, just kidding, they're all asexual. And it was like, I can't tell if this was just like, in the original book series, because it's, what is it? I don't remember what it's called at this point. Only a monster, something like that. But to me, it almost felt like the publisher forced her to put a romance in the first book series. And then she kind of got her way in the third book that it was like, okay, this is actually how I wanted my characters to be. So I kind of let that one go. The fact that this is the same thing makes it feel really weird. Like I feel very uncomfortable about it, that it's now become an issue in all of her books. And I don't like it. I don't like that it feels very baity. It's just weird. I don't know how else to explain it. It feels like this is very bad asexual rep, and it's uncomfortable to read. And I read really good asexual rep, and this is not it. This was very uncomfortable. And again, all the preachiness and the weirdness going on top of all that, and it just didn't work. And this book should have been amazing. This should have been one of my favorite books of the year, because you have nightmares coming to life, monsters, hunting monsters. None of that was good. None of it was good. So I ended up DNFing this pretty far into the book. I just could not stand it any longer. That's how bad it was. I think I was like 200 pages in, and I could not go any farther in this book. All right, moving on to our top 10 list. Number 10 on this list is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. I've already talked about this in my most disappointed, but yeah, this was bad. This was bad. I literally remember telling somebody as I was reading this, I was like, should I feel like I've been reading for a century and I'm 10 pages into the book? That's how you know it's a bad book. This is definitely a divisive book. People either really like this book or really don't like it. I haven't heard many people in the center. They're obviously there, like everyone's reading is so different. There's obviously people who are gonna be just kind of about it. But generally I've either heard really bad things or really good things about this book, and I loathed this book. I loathed the characters. It was not dark academia to me whatsoever. I don't get it. I don't get how people thought this was dark academia. It is people stuck in a building doing magic stuff together, but it didn't feel dark academia. It felt forced dark academia, if that makes sense. It was just them in a bunker just messing around. That's literally what this was. And it was like secret society, but it was none of the fun stuff with a secret society. Just kind of was so boring. The characters were all terrible people. If you liked The Secret History, you'll probably like this, in my opinion. I really did not like The Secret History either, so there's also that. But I just really didn't like this one, so we're gonna move right along. Because I don't have anything other to say about this one than I just really didn't like this one. Another one that I also talked about in the most disappointed was Dark Corners by Megan Golden. This one comes in at number 9. Terrible, 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 terrible thriller. The Night Swim is one of my favorite thrillers of all time, and this was supposed to be the follow-up. We were still following Rachel Kroll from the first books, and she is trying to take on the case of a missing influencer. She's brought in by, I think it's the FBI, and she has to go talk to this guy who is supposedly a serial killer who is in jail, and the guy's really defensive, doesn't know what's going on, supposedly, and she gets really invested and starts investigating herself. But none of it works. And a bunch of the story is told through the perspective of the serial killer, which I hate. I really don't like. I suffered through all of those storylines. I really, really didn't like it. And I also really didn't like the fact that it used a person who there is a real genetic disorder where some people give off incredibly strong smelling body odor, and it's unpleasant to smell, and it's like can be exacerbated by stress. And the serial killer has this condition, and it's like, really? Like, that's so mean to that community that already has to deal with so much. And it's used as an yeah, he was treated very poorly and they think that's what caused his serial killerness. But it's like, maybe that's a thing that could happen in real life, but I don't know. I felt so uncomfortable about the fact that they like heaped that on that. Like, it didn't need that. It didn't need that whatsoever. I didn't like that. I really didn't like the fact that he had that condition, because it just felt like an excuse. And it also just felt like a disservice to people who have that. Like, really, like, reading about that would suck. Like, it would really suck. And it just wasn't fun. Like, there was a bunch of red herrings going on and like side quests going on that were really stupid and didn't make a lot of sense and just really hurt the book in general. And Rachel was obnoxious in this book, and I really liked her in the first book. It just didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't work. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Next, we have The Ruins by Scott Smith. I wasn't expecting to even read this book this year, but I kind of wanted to read some like horror that people consider kind of staple horror books. And I actually really wanted to watch the movie because I was bored one night. So I was like, okay, let me listen to this really short audiobook and then let me watch the movie and see the differences between the two. Yikes, both were bad. Both were really bad. I actually shockingly liked the book better than the movie, because the movie was, wow, it was bad. But the book was, it was weird. So it's basically following this group of friends who they have to track down this guy's brother who decides to follow this girl to an archaeological dig site and doesn't come back for a few days, so he's worried he's gotten distracted, and they're supposed to be leaving Mexico in a few days. So everyone's like, okay, let's go with this stranger we met a couple days ago. So we all go to this ruins, and already some weird stuff is happening. They keep telling them get away from it, and they don't really understand what's going on, and they accidentally step in this forbidden zone, and they are shoved in there by the locals. The locals force them in there, and they're not allowed to leave. So it's them kind of trying to survive and figuring out what's going on, and there's a lot of just stuff happening. And probably my biggest gripe is one of the earliest descriptions of something, you know where this is going. One of the earliest descriptions of something was that this hill looked like a breast. And I was like, we're in for a treat, aren't we? We are in for a treat for this book. And I was not disappointed on that aspect. There was random graphic sex scenes in the middle of graphic violence things going on. And I was just like, why? Why? I was sitting there just like, nope. Why does this always happen? This is why I don't read old horror books. I think this is literally just from like, what, 2006? I don't know if that's the movie date or the book date, but come on, man. And this is why I won't read from that author. If that author's written anything else, I'm not reading from that author, because I cannot stand male authors writing female characters. And also the female characters were horrible. They were horrible. It was just not good. It was not good. It was another very kind of sexist, weirdly sexual horror book that I just did not like. It. Yikes. No, absolutely not. Coming in at number 7 is None of This Is True by Lisa Joel. I probably should have swapped those. I don't know. None of This Is True I had such a hard time putting on this list in a specific part, because I actually really enjoyed the reading experience. The audiobook was really, really good. I hated the story. I really didn't like the story. I was bored for a lot of it. I didn't like the twist. I didn't like any of the twists. There was a weird plot line of, again, it depends how you read the story as well, but there was a really weird, we read this for my book club, and a lot of people kind of agreed on this. There was a weird plot line of blaming the victim of a pedophile going on in this, because our main character is kind of one of our main characters is actually unhinged, and she started dating a 40, 50 something year old when she was 15, and that is abuse. That is abuse. And she turns out to be the crazy one, and you basically want to feel bad for the pedophile later in the story. And it's like, that rubbed me the completely wrong way. That just does not work for me whatsoever. And there was no explanation of it. There was no like, oh, this is what really happened. The guy wasn't actually a pedophile. No. It was fully admitted to that she was a pedophile. And you were kind of supposed to feel bad for him later, because it seemed more like elderly abuse later. But it's like, but he was a pedophile. So, yeah. That's all I have to say about that one, because that really is what really did it for me. That's what it was. And I hated the end. The end was so bad. It was an ambiguous ending, and I was like, no, I hate ambiguous endings. That is what killed me. The mix of the pedophile who we're supposed to feel bad for because of elderly abuse and super ambiguous ending just absolutely ruined this book for me. Another horror thriller kind of on the story. You could kind of go either way with this one. I would say it leans more thriller at the beginning and then leads more horror towards the end. Burn the Negative. I was so excited about this one. One of my favorite things in stories is following cursed films or just things that happen on film sets. It can be any genre across the board. I love film settings. I love it. I absolutely love it. Or television sets. Anything that has to do with that, I normally end up really, really liking it. This seemed so cool. We are following our main character who was originally on this film, and like everybody else in the film has died. It is a cursed film, and so she's kind of like in hiding, and they decide to reboot the film into, I don't know if it's another film or a TV series, but she is going as a writer to go cover it even though she doesn't want to, and people start dying, and it's obviously still cursed, and you kind of have to figure out what's going on. Oh my gosh, this was so bad. It got so weird at the end. I still don't know if I actually know what happened at the end. I still don't think I know what happened at the end. It was depressing. I didn't like it. And I didn't like any of the characters. They were all terrible. And again, the ending was so bad. The ending was like, what is happening? What is actually happening? This had a really good opening. I really liked the opening and probably the first 20 to 30%. And then it was like a nosedive, like absolute nosedive into what is happening. I hate this. I know I say what is happening a lot, but literally while I was reading this, I was going, what is happening? What is actually happening? I need help. I need a guide as to what is happening in this book because I don't know what's happening and I don't understand. So yeah, was not a fan. Was really not a fan of this one. Going on to number 5 on our list, another mystery thriller. It's a lot of horror mystery thrillers on this, I've realized. I feel like I had a really bad mystery thriller year, and normally I feel like I have a lot more on my favorites list than least favorites, but this is chock load of mystery thrillers that I've read. So Lying in the Deep is coming in at number 5. This is one of, if not the worst young adult mystery thriller that I've ever read. It was one of the worst written ones that I've ever read. I don't even know what the point of this book was. We're following our main character who is going on a semester abroad kind of thing. And they're all going to get on this cruise line ship thing, and it turns out her ex-boyfriend, who is now dating her ex-best friend, are going on the ship together, and she is depressed, she is sad, she is pining, and then somebody goes missing, and she and her ex-boyfriend kind of become suspects, and there's other suspects, but 90% of the book is her pining after her ex-boyfriend, who sucks. Who sucks, and her pining after this new guy who just exists. And again, this is another one where the ending was very bizarre. Very, very, very bizarre. And I don't know how, well, I was gonna say I don't know how I feel about it, but I definitely know how I feel about it because I didn't like it. I didn't like anything that happened. I've never seen a more whiny character in my entire life on page. Wow, was she annoying. And consistently making poor decision after poor decision. And again, the pining was so awful. It was so awful. And the actual like twist was like, what? Like, what? And I feel like you're supposed to feel bad for characters that never in a million years would I feel bad for. So it was just weird. The ending was weird. The whole book was weird, super poorly written. It's not a mystery thriller. It is a, I don't even know how to explain it. It is like a pining teen drama. That is what it really is. And it is not good. Coming in at number 4 is The Coworker by Frida McFadden, which is funny because one of my favorites, it's going to be on honorable mentions, it didn't actually make the top 10, was the second Housemaid book. What is it? The Housemaid's Secret, I think? Something like that. Whatever the second book was, really liked it. And then I read The Coworker right after it, and I loathed this book. I really hated this book. This is following our main character, 2 main characters. One of the main characters is told through past emails, and the other main character who we're following in present day is a suspect in the disappearance of the woman whose emails we're reading, and they both worked in the same place. It's definitely like a unreliable narrator kind of story. You don't know who's telling the truth because our main character is saying one thing happened, the emails are saying something else is happening, and the girl who wrote the emails is currently missing, so you don't know what her side of it and what is going on. So you're kind of just left to decide who is telling the truth, what is going on. And the twist of this is terrible. This is one of those that it is the twist trope that I don't like whatsoever. It doesn't work for me. I never like it when it happens in stories, and I just thought it was a pointless book, and I was skimming through the emails. Like, the emails would go on for pages of absolute nonsense. You did not need to read half of them to get the point of the book, because I didn't. I skipped like 60% of them. I just skimmed through them and I was like, okay, oh, there's an important part. Okay, keep going. Yeah, I didn't need any of that information because guess what? I understood the book just fine without it. And when the twist happened, I was just like, whatever, this is stupid. I will say the twist on the very last page, because Frida McFadden is known for doing multiple twists, the very final twist, like one of the last things in the book, I loved it and I screamed because I was like, but the rest of the book was so bad and so boring and so pointless. That's why it's so high on this list, because I probably should have DNF'd it. I'm glad I didn't DNF it just because that little tidbit, the one line, it's like one line at the end that was really good. So that does not make up for the rest of the book being unbearable. Like literally unbearable. I should have DNF'd it. I really should have. All right, we are up in the top 3 books. These are the top 3. So coming in at number 3, we have Wildblood by Lauren Blackwood. This book made my decision to not read this author again, which is sad because I just saw the announcement for her new book coming out next year, and again, has a premise that I think I'll really like, but oh my gosh, I've read 2 books by this author now, and this one is worse. This is the newest one. This one came out in 2023. I read, oh man, I don't remember the other book. It was a Jane Eyre retelling, the book in 2022. And that one also didn't work, but it was better. It was better than this one. It was better than this one. This one started off with a really amazing premise, and I actually really liked the beginning of it, but the rest of the book was almost insulting. It was vile what happened in this book. This is a young adult book following our main character who is basically enslaved by this travel company, and she is known as a Wildblood. They can use their blood to create objects, do magical things. It's very interesting. And so obviously the group of Wildbloods really wants to escape, but they're shot if they're trying to escape, etc. So they just kind of go along with it, and hopefully after so many years they're able to like buy out their contract or something like that. It's something like that. I don't remember exactly because I read this back in like January or February. I think I read it in February. Basically, she gets assigned to this group that wants to go into the woods, because that's the other thing. Outside of the compound, there's like magical woods that people like to come and travel into because it's supposed to have really interesting things in it. And again, this part was really cool because there's a lot of magic in the woods. It's very interesting, and our main character feels very called to the woods and feels kind of at home there. While everyone else, basically, if you go in, you're gonna disappear in some awful way. I didn't mention before, this is a very violent book. This is a very violent book. Anyway, there's a new group of tourists who are willing to pay a ridiculous amount of money to go deep into the woods where you normally don't go. I don't remember the purpose of it. I think they're trying to like go to an area to clear out space, or there's like Fountain of Youth, something like that. Something, they just need to get to a certain part of the forest that no one ever, or jungle, sorry, jungle, there you go, jungle, that no one is supposed to go into, but she kind of volunteers because she has the best luck with the jungle, and they have some other people going, including her ex-boyfriend, who is abusive. Keep that in mind, abusive. And she ends up falling in love upon sight with one of the wealthy white men going on this trip, and they become obsessed with each other. And I thought he was going to turn out to be a villain because it was so obvious. No, it was just romance. It was love at first sight, and it was horrible. It was horrible. So what really made this story bad was the romance. It was terrible. There was no need to have that love at first sight thing in. All of the romance should have just taken out of this book, and it would have been significantly better, because the other thing that really makes this book a 1-star and gives it the number 3 spot on here is she romanticizes her abusive ex-boyfriend who kills people, who kills her friends. After he kills them. Like, it's not even before. It's after. He abuses her, attacks her, kills her friends, and you're supposed to be okay with her romanticizing him at the end? What? What? Are you actually kidding me? Like, she thinks about how much, like, she was in love with him, and she kisses him, and I'm just like, this is vile. Vile. Disgusting. And you're supposed to believe he, like, turns over kind of a new leaf at the end because he kind of tries to help her, and it's like, he literally killed your best friend, like, in cold blood. What are you doing? What are you doing? So I can't. This is easily one of the worst books I read this year. And I feel like I tried not to hate it as much when I read it, but the more it sat with me as the months have gone on, the worse it's felt, which is, normally I feel like stuff becomes softer. Like my favorites list, it was hard to get through because like some of them I kind of forgot some of the plot and how much I really love them. But this is like the hate just increased as we were going on. So I don't think I can pick up another book by this author, because the first book that I read by this author also had insta love and it was very poorly written, and I kind of just wiped that off as being a debut novel. But the second book being worse, No. And again, vile, absolutely vile, romanticizing the abuse in this book. I don't understand why this was the way it was. Coming in at number 2, this should probably actually be number 3. Probably should have swapped Wildblood the more I talk about Wildblood and this book, but we're gonna keep it here because there was a jump scare in this book that I did not like. People really like this book, so definitely like skip ahead if you like this one, because I really didn't like this one. And I actually have a full review on this, and it made people very upset. It made people very upset, but I have a very, very specific reason why I hated this book and why I think it was a major problem, and it is My Murder. And this is supposed to be a very interesting thriller slash, I think this is more sci-fi than anything, but the synopsis, it's very important to point out, the synopsis does not bring up what the whole story is actually about. This was like a fake out kind of story where it draws you in saying one thing, but the book is about something totally different, which is not fair to people who are very sensitive about this subject. So this story is following our main character who was murdered before the book began, and we are actually following a exact clone replica of the person who was murdered. So there's like a new technology where if people were murdered before they were supposed to, or there was disaster, something happened where they died before they're supposed to. It's really used for rich people, but there was public outcry to bring these serial killer women back to life. And so she gets brought back to life using DNA, etc., and her memories are implanted in her, and she kind of becomes a different person. But it's really about the fact that the story is all about postpartum depression. It is entirely about postpartum depression. This made you believe that, and this was, I want to say on Book of the Month, it said contemporary fiction, which was my bad, but I went based on the Goodreads thing, which was thriller. The tag was thriller, mystery, and then like contemporary, which a lot of thrillers have that as the secondary tags. But I should have trusted the Book of the Month one. I should have trusted the Book of the Month one, because this was not about the thriller mystery at all. I mean, it did eventually become about that, but by the time you get to that point, you're kind of just like, whatever, because most of the book is about motherhood and about postpartum depression and functioning through that and getting over that. And I don't want to read about that. This is what I'm talking about, jump scare. It was like postpartum depression jump scare. If you had trigger warnings for this, you would have went to this book and been traumatized. Now, some people were helped by it. I love the fact that some people read this not knowing what it was and had struggled with postpartum, and this actually helped them. I love that. But for me, reading about postpartum, reading about children, reading about being a mother is something that I really, really feel uncomfortable reading about. I really don't like reading about it. We're not going to go into the reasons why, but I was very upset reading this book and very angry, and I feel like it is very unfair to not mention that at all in your synopsis. It is completely unacceptable to not have that as a, like, hey, this is going to be about postpartum. This is a mother dealing with postpartum and this murder mystery going on. I don't think that's cool. I really, really don't feel like that was fair to readers. So you can tell I'm getting a little emotional about it because it makes me so angry that this was marketed the way it was. And I think that's why this one is so high up, because the book, that's the thing. The book I hated, but it wasn't as bad as some of the other books on this list if I had known about what was in it, but then I probably wouldn't have read it. I wouldn't have picked it up. But at least if I had, I would have been prepared for that, and it probably wouldn't be as high on this list. It'd probably be number 10 or 9 instead of being number 2. But the marketing and the synopsis is what really makes me say, hey, you need to fix that. That's not cool. That is not cool to have done what you did there, because it really was 90% like about postpartum depression, including even the twist. The twist was even about that. So I can't with this book. Coming in at number 1, this probably is no surprise to people who follow my channel pretty regularly. This book was so bad. There's a lot of reasons this book was really bad, but it's mostly because I have a beef with this author. I have a beef with I have a beef with what this author was trying to do, and it is not cool. It's not cool. It's not cool what this author was doing. But the book is I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai. Yeah. Most of you probably already knew that if you're watching this. Where do I start? Where do I start with this book? If you like this book at all, do not watch this. Do not watch this. Just click off. Just click off of this video. This author was selling her soul for a Pulitzer. That's really what this was. So this author has a previous book that was nominated for a Pulitzer, and it was very obvious that this author was gunning for one and was using social issues as a jumping point to try to get that Pulitzer, and remarkably, spectacularly failed, like epically failed in her mission to completely brainwash the masses into believing what she is saying in this book. Because the sad part is, she's saying a lot of good things. She's saying a lot of good things. She's saying too many of them. She is using other people's pain to profit. And that is really what this book comes down to. Let's list off the things, the social issues that she brings up in this book. She talks about fat phobia, the Me Too movement, the problems with the Me Too movement, sex crimes on campuses, the rich eating the poor kind of things going on, the problem with podcasts being good, both of those at the same time, true crime and the issues with true crime, but also the good things about true crime, the justice system in general, the justice system when it comes to Black people being arrested and accused of crimes they did not commit more often than everybody else, keeping people behind bars who are clearly innocent and can be proven innocent, but the justice system doesn't like reversing calls, marriage, I didn't expect that one, but the problems with normal marriage. I want to say there's more in there. I'm trying to think of more, but there's more in there. I know for a fact there's more in there. Anyway, this book is marketed as a book following our main character who used to go to this very preppy high-end school, and one of the girls at school while she was there went missing and was found murdered, and the only Black employee was blamed for it, arrested, and in a recent time, I think he just died in jail. So she decides, she's offered a semester there, a summer semester where she can go teach a podcasting class because she's a podcaster, and she thinks it's unethical for her to do a podcast about the thing that she was at school for, even though she wasn't even friends with the girl. So she kind of manipulates her, some of the people in class to do a podcast about it, and that's what kind of starts the story going. But it ends up not being about the person arrested at all. This did not, it did such a disservice to this. And if I thought it was intentional, I would feel like it was brilliant, but I don't think it was intentional. So basically, the guy is arrested, he dies, and she wants to prove his innocence, but it doesn't become about proving his innocence. It becomes about proving somebody else did it. So he's basically forgotten. So that part of social justice is forgotten. And again, if it felt intentional, it would have been like, oh, this is a commentary about how once it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So everyone forgot about him, and even the people in the story forgot about him. So I would have been like, oh, it's actually a very interesting commentary. Instead, it was just forgotten about because she was trying to cram in so many other problems. A lot of the story ended up being about her ex-husband, who, again, this is the marriage part. They have a very interesting marriage, and they're still married, but living apart and doing this. And it's like, she makes a commentary about traditional marriage and and it's just like, okay, whatever. Moving on to the next point. And a lot of it is about her husband, ex-husband, I guess still husband, who is accused of harassing this woman because this is where it gets weird. This woman starts doing a series online about her ex-husband and being treated poorly by men and women being seen as side pieces and as not real people, etc. Which is like, okay, interesting. But she accuses him of assault, and you find out the assault is emotional assault because he told her he wasn't interested in anything and they had an affair and then he never called her, and that's what the piece is about. So I'm very confused. So it was trying to put you on the Me Too movement and say the husband's a bad person, while also telling you that the Me Too movement is over-exaggerated sometimes, and sometimes that can be detrimental to the Me Too movement, which is, all of that is true. But shoving that all in the same book while also having the backstory of a innocent Black man who was arrested for a crime he did not commit, as the main backbone, but you start having that as your main thing, it's very confusing. It's very confusing. It's like, pick something. You can't just throw everything. It's the kitchen sink method. You can't throw the kitchen sink at it and hope you get a Pulitzer Prize out of it, that something's gonna stick. You can't throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and hope something's gonna stick and they're gonna be like, wow, you really said something. And it's like, no, you said a lot, but none of it actually meant anything. And I think that's what drove me crazy about this the most, because it did feel very exploitative. It felt exploitative of social issues, and that this author didn't know what to do, so they just crammed everything into one book. And I think the ending was interesting, but overall this book said absolutely nothing. And it felt preachy, but not saying anything. It felt like she doesn't even understand any social issues because she didn't talk about any in length. They were just briefly brought up like, hey, this exists, this exists. So she really just needed to pick something. Either pick what the original story was supposed to be about, or go with the plotline of the husband's story and try to say something about that. But you can't just shove everything in there that you want to just because you missed out on the Pulitzer for your first book that you tried to get a Pulitzer for. So yeah, it's mostly a beef with this author and what she was trying to do with this book, because this had a lot of promise to it if she had just stuck to one purpose. The author did not commit. The author did not commit, felt half-hearted, half-assed, didn't like it, and that's all I'm gonna say about this book. I think I have a whole review about it that talks a little bit more in depth because I had just read it when I did the review for it. Anyway, those are my worst books of 2023. It's really those top three. Those top three really killed me. And that's how normally my worst books go, is if I have a personal vendetta against them, that's what ends up being the top 3 or 4 books. And that's pretty much what this was. That's pretty much what this was. So anyway, that is all I have for you today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys kind of agreed on some of them at least. Definitely let me know down below in the comments if you agreed with any, if you loved any of these on this list. Again, everyone's reading opinion is very different. Even my most hated book, I have some questions for you. If you loved it, good for you. Good for you if you got stuff out of it. I hope some people got some stuff out of it, because I got nothing. I got nothing out of that book. Like I said, make sure to comment down below whatever you want to comment about. It can be about the weather. I don't really care. I'll still read it and respond probably. Yeah, make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it. Make sure you comment down below, like I said, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any other future content. We got a lot of stuff in 2024 that we are working on. I'm very excited about it. Very, very excited about it. And like I said, and I'm going to say in all my videos, 2024 is sci-fi year. We are doing sci-fi this year, I think. I think 2024 is the year of sci-fi. So that is what we're planning to do, and that's all I have for you today. So I will see you guys in the next video.